Hi friends, so I have a word and some scripture to go with it. So I just wanted to kind of share this with you. I've been praying about this and I hope it touches your heart today and where you are in your journey. So this morning the Lord said, "You are enough. I have accepted you." It's not that you haven't done enough. It's not that you haven't tried. Seed, then time, then harvest. My timing is perfect, and when you see it, you will know why I orchestrated it the way that I did. I never forgot Joseph. At the appointed time, I fulfilled every promise made to him. Great preparation comes with great purpose. I am the Lord, and I will do it. Rest in my sovereignty and my timing. Be still and know. Work your blueprint and be faithful. The promise is assured. The verse is Isaiah 61:7, and it says, "For your shame you shall have double, and for confusion you will rejoice in your portion. Therefore in your land you will possess the double, and everlasting joy will be yours." So I wanted to take you to the story of Joseph in Genesis 40. Make sure I got that right for you. Yes. So if you've grown up at all knowing the story about Joseph, this is going to make sense to you. Joseph was basically one of the sons of Jacob, and he had gifts, and the Lord had made promises to him as a child. And, I think some of the maturity that comes with his journey is knowing that not everything that God reveals to you is something that you need to broadcast for everyone else. But I'm sure in his excitement, he was eager to tell his brothers, eager to tell his dad the things that the Lord was showing to him through dreams. And it caused his brothers to become extremely jealous of him and then to sell him into slavery and fake his death just to be completely rid of him. So not everything that the Lord shares with you is something that should be broadcast to everyone else. So Joseph goes through this circuitous path to get to his place of promise. And the passage that I want to hone in on here is, and I think what we need to focus on is all of the preparation that Joseph went through, and the things that he was trusted with as part of his growth to position him for being a solution to Egypt. So let's start with Genesis chapter 40. It says that this is entitled "The Cupbearer and the Baker." It says, "Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with two of his officials, and the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them into custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own." So here Joseph has been developing in the gifts of dream interpretation, and now he has been given a promotion of sorts. He's head of the prison. He's taking care of these two people who were in the throne room with the king of Egypt, okay? So it says, "When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked the Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, 'Why are your faces so sad today?' 'We both had dreams,' they answered, 'but there is no one to interpret them.' And Joseph said to them, 'Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams.' So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, 'In my dream, I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup and put the cup in his hand.' 'This is what it means,' Joseph said to him. 'The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to when you were his cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. For I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon. And when the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, I too had a dream. On my head there were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket and on my head. This is what it means, Joseph said. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat away your flesh. Now the 3rd day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all of his officials. He lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the chief cupbearer, to his position, and once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to them in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. And then the next part is the part that I really want to hone in on. So it says, starting in chapter 41, when 2 full years had passed. So if you can imagine what's going on in Joseph's mind, he's given a dream interpretation. He probably hears the news of these 2 things. And then he has to deal with how he's going to lead himself in terms of his emotions and his thinking, knowing that he was forgotten by the cupbearer, but God's given him this amazing promise, but everything that has lined up thus far in his life looks like punishment. And again, like the Lord said today, great preparation comes with great purpose. So I think a lot of times the Lord is really showing us, he's giving us opportunities to be sharpened, but he's also showing us what not to do when he promotes us. So when 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile when out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they gazed among the reeds after them. 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up out of the Nile and stood beside those on the river bank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek, fat cows. And then Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again, and he had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads of grain sprouted. They were thin, and they were scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads, and then Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. In the morning, his mind was greatly troubled, and he sent for all the magicians and the wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. Then the chief cupbearer, ding, 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 light bulb moment 2 years after the fact. Today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house and the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, with each dream had a meaning of its own. Now the young Hebrew was there with us, and he was a servant of the captain of the guard. So we told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of the dream. All things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was hanged. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. And when they had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I've heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. I cannot do it, Joseph replied to Pharaoh, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. And so then Pharaoh goes on to tell the dream. And if we scroll down, but we're not scrolling because we're in the old school hard copy Bible here. If we scroll down to where it said Joseph gives an interpretation, and then 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. And then it says all of the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered, because the famine that follows it will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in two forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. And now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land and take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. And they should collect all the food for these good years that are coming up and store the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined from famine. The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all of his officials. So Pharaoh asked them, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" So then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all of this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you are. You will be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." So Joseph was made in charge of Egypt during that time, and in charge of preparing Egypt. And one of the things that I noticed as I was reading that is Joseph didn't anticipate that the famine would come upon everything. The Bible talks about Egypt, and I know that at that time Egypt was like the greatest kingdom in the world, but this storage of food would be the catalyst that would bring his brothers into Egypt looking for grain, and it would be what reunited his family. So when we go back to this word that the Lord spoke today, he said, "I never forgot Joseph. At the appointed time, I fulfilled every promise that I made to him." And I really feel like he did that and more. Like he gave him back his dad. He gave him back his brothers. He was reunited with his brother Benjamin. He was made head of second to Pharaoh. He was a solutionist for the world, and then the Lord gave him two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were like double blessings for his shame. So today when the Lord said, "Whoever this is for your shame, you will receive double. And for your confusion, you will rejoice in your portion and in your land." For Joseph, he wasn't in Israel. Israel wasn't a thing at the time, but he wasn't reunited with his family. His family came to him. But he was made an effective decision maker and second to Pharaoh in all of Egypt. So wherever your land is, the Lord's saying you will possess the double. The promise is assured. And he says everlasting joy will be unto you. So I don't know if this is something that, Joseph's entire life was preparation for the thing. And he still had to go through forgiving his brothers when he saw them. He had to go through the grief of being separated from his dad, but the Lord made everything beautiful in its time. So the Lord is saying, "I am the Lord and I will do it. Rest in my sovereignty." In other words, he's God, you're not. It's not about your timeline. It's about what God's doing, not just in you, but in the world, in that future place that he's preparing you for, to get you there so that you will be, like he said, you will know why I orchestrated it the way that I did. So he is saying to be still and know. So Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God, and I will be exalted above all the earth." And I think for us in this sense of this word and context, it's like, I don't know if you're an executor. I don't know exactly where you fall into the spectrum of possessing your promise, other than this very tiny revelation that the Lord has given me, which I know is just kind of a fragment of your whole story. But being still doesn't necessarily mean in lack of movement, but it just means knowing. It's having this knowing that God is God, and that it's God's timing, it's God's plan, it's God's way, it's God's will. And I think when I hear be still and know, for me, I'm a charger. Like, I want to charge ahead and do all of the things, and I can execute myself into into kind of an unhealthy situation if I don't have proper boundaries. But being still for me doesn't mean not working, not just waiting for the miracle to show up on your front porch, because we know that it doesn't work that way. But I think it means, for me, it's being yoked to Jesus. So if I was yoked to what I wanted, I would be yoked to works. I would be yoked to burnout, because eventually you burn out from doing everything yourself and not giving yourself rest. I would be yoked to dissatisfaction. I would be yoked to probably making an Ishmael instead of an Isaac, so not necessarily the promise, but me manufacturing this version of what I think the promise should look like instead of trusting God. But being still, being yoked to Jesus, means to me that I'm going at his pace. So if he's the one leading me, it doesn't matter how fast I want to run, or how fast I want to drive, or how fast I want to go. It is at the pace that the Lord has for me. And it's knowing that everything walking to that place is preparation. I think about Joseph a lot, because I think about, I'm sure that as a child and getting such incredible revelation from God, you can start to think that, like, you're incredibly special or you're incredibly gifted, and what that might have done to his ego as a young man. And then, the Bible doesn't tell us, at least not the NIV that I'm reading, doesn't tell us, how did Joseph process all of that? Like, was his pride a big issue? Did he have to go through jail and everything, and being falsely accused and facing rejection so that he could lament and empathize with people who were rejected, so that he could deal with the isolation that comes with rejection? Being in a prison, we're not all of us in physical prisons, but I believe that when the Lord wants to do something in us, he separates us. So I'm not saying that by any means God puts us under arrest, but I can attest to the fact that before personal and professional elevation, the Lord really did a lot of sifting in my life, of my mind, my relationships, my alignments, and things like that. So all that to say, I think being yoked to the Lord and allowing him, to lead us in everything is really what he's saying right now. So he spoke of working your blueprint and just being faithful. So I wrote this down that I had heard before. It's from Rabbi Abraham Heschel. And it says, if you work with your hands, Sabbath with your mind. And if you work with your mind, Sabbath with your hands. And for me, I can get to the point where I think about things so much that it becomes exhausting to think about them. So art is a creative outlet for me, and it allows me to work with my hands and be expressive in a way that is not, I'm not thinking. I don't know if you've ever spoken to artists, but artists don't really, well, I can't say all of them because everyone's unique, but when you're creating, you're not thinking about how to create, you're just creating. I don't know if that makes sense. But so for me, especially when I'm in a heavy content phase of work, I just want to do something that doesn't require strategy or execution. So, it's like working out as a way for physical exertion, it's moving your body. art is a way of expressing creativity that needs to come out that I feel like has been stifled because of the logical and the executor side of the brain. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just explaining how it works for me. So, this is what I wrote down. We cannot finish what God is still working on. So, like, if you like to check boxes and you like to have that feeling of accomplishment, like, I did this today and I got all these things done on my to-do list. And yeah, if you're in your process, you can't hurry your process because God is still working on it. So if He hasn't finished it, we are really just fooling ourselves if we think that somehow that we can control the timing of whatever the promise looks like. So for me, this is all a constant thing of like submitting myself to God and recognizing my own human limitations. So I think that's just, for me, it's a way to stay humble and go, God is God and I am not. So I want to do all the things. I feel very content when I can execute it with great efficiency. But our bodies need rest, and we need mental rest. We need spiritual rest, physical rest, and emotional rest. And I think sometimes when, personally for me, a good way that I recognize that something is out of balance is if I start showing signs of, either being mentally tired or not having the drive to go work out one day, or maybe I'm not reading my Bible as regularly as I should, or maybe I'm emotionally triggered very easily. That's typically a sign to me that something is out of alignment. So that's really where I have to kind of pause and seek the Lord and say, God, show me where I'm in error so I can correct that. Basically, I need you to pull my rein, so that I know how to stay healthy and how to keep things in proper alignment. So the Lord said to you today to work your blueprint and be faithful. And I thought that was interesting just because a blueprint is a design or it's a guide for making something. And, I was thinking about who had blueprints in the Bible. So Noah had a blueprint for the ark that God gave him. David had a blueprint for the temple that he gave to Solomon to actually execute. And then Moses was given a blueprint for the tabernacle by God. So setting up the sanctuary, right? If this message is resonating with you, it's probably because, you are a builder, you are a leader, and you are a deliverer of a certain population of people. It could be in the marketplace, it could be in community. Obviously, whatever the Lord has given you revelation toward, your unique vision, your unique blueprint, that is the thing that He is saying, work at it and be faithful. Know your limitations. Rest. Spend time with me. Give yourself an opportunity to know that it's not up to you to fulfill this. God is going to fulfill it, but you are to work the thing. So the Lord is reminding you today that, I just want to read it again because I think that it's meaningful to you where you are. For your shame, you will have double. For your confusion, you will rejoice in your portion. Therefore, in your land, you will possess the double, and everlasting joy will be unto you. So no matter where you are in your preparation or in your process today, the Lord has said the promise is assured. He's redeeming everything. And I'm going to put the word below so that you can read it again if you'd like. So I'm praying for you. I love you. And I'm excited to see what the Lord is going to do through you. So stay on your blueprint and just know that the timing is coming.